dark haze. Ladies of the night with eyes of red, vampires in the alleys where good men dread, wolfmen howling beneath the pale moon. But justice is coming and coming soon. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. Cryptids themselves, yet they stand tall against the darkness, answering the call for every lost soul, every whispered prayer. They fight for the light in the midnight air. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. The night is young, the hunt begins. For against the darkness where hope never ends.
Good evening, folks, and thank you guys for joining us on another edition of the Nightmare Hunters podcast. Before we jump into things tonight, I want to take a minute because you guys know we always take prayer requests and we mention some very specific people, but there's a couple things I really wanted to mention in particular. I'll turn it over to Robbie here in just a second because one of them is very personal for him. Be praying for Robbie as well. But just wanted to ask you guys to say a few prayers for my sister Becky. For the last couple of years, she's been fighting cancer. And they thought they had it beat, and she went back to see her oncologist, and it is now spread to her liver. And they're doing a biopsy here in the next week or so. And she's pretty scared, and we're pretty worried about her. So if you guys could keep her in your prayers and thoughts, we would sure appreciate it. And Robbie, I'll let you take over the next bit, and I will bring that up.
Well, so this all got started. My grandmother, which we were expecting, which still doesn't make it any easier. My grandmother passed away. What was it, Saturday or Sunday morning? DA, I think I told y'all. Sunday morning. So it's kind of already down about that. Then late last night, I see something come across my feed from one of my former soccer players talking about another one of my former players. And I coached this kid from the time he was in 7th grade till the time he was in 12th grade. And all he ever wanted to do was be a soldier. And I don't know what happened other than what's said right there, but he got killed, I'm assuming, like they say, in a training accident. What this is about, and he was very close to retirement. I think that says he was, what, two weeks, DA, I think is what it said. Something like that. But 7 of his brothers in his unit want to escort him home, and the Army will only pay for one. So if anybody wants to help those soldiers escort their fallen brother home, that's what those 2 QR codes are for. If you can't, that's fine, I understand. But, I know how everybody feels on this channel. And, you know, that was one of my favorite kids that I've ever coached. I mean, he always had a good attitude, and like I said, that's all he ever wanted to do was be a soldier. And I was telling DA before we got on, you know, I'd always say, "Well, Kane, what you gonna do when you graduate?" No worries, coach. I'm going in the Army. I want to be a soldier. And he did, and he was a good one. His mother was a great lady, or is a great lady. She was one of my team moms, and she always made sure and helped take care of the rest of the team. And I know she's devastated. He had a wife and a little baby. His older sister Zoe was always at the game, supporting him and supporting the rest of the team. It's just a great family, and I can understand why there's so many that want to go, because Kane was just one of those kids you couldn't help but like him. He always had a joke. He always had something funny to say. Even when I was chewing the team out, he had a way of, you know, just cracking a joke that would just throw the butt chewing out the window. And I loved the kid to death. He was just a great kid, and my heart's broken for him and his family. And like I said, on top of, you know, with my grandmother, I guess it's just two of them hit me in the same week's kind of hard. But if anybody can or wants to help, that's what those are there for. You know, I'd appreciate it. I know the family would appreciate it. So I'm going to quit before I can't do the show.
I totally get it, brother. I totally get it. But we're going to jump right into this because, like Robbie, I don't want to get too maudlin when I get to thinking about stuff. As you guys know how we are. But tonight we're going to be talking about Bigfoot encounters in the Great Smoky Mountains, and every one of these are Class A sightings. These are confirmed sightings. We cite our resources where we got these encounters. You'll be hearing that all throughout the show. We're going to be examining documented sightings, aggressive encounters, and see what holds up under field analysis, because we are going to be kind of tearing into these to kind of look for what makes sense and what doesn't. But these are all documented encounters. All right, y'all, tonight, let's get something straight right up front. We're not doing campfire stories tonight. We're not getting into anything we can't actually document and stand behind. This is a Bigfoot encounters in the Great Smoky Mountains. And every case we're looking at falls into one of two categories. Either somebody clearly saw something, or they had an encounter close enough that it changed what they were doing in that particular moment. If it doesn't meet that standard, we're not even examining it. If you're new here, welcome. This is the Nightmare Hunters, and we don't tell you what to believe. We take real reports, we break them down, and we test them against what we know about the real world. And the rule stays simple every time. If we can't cite it, we don't use it. If it doesn't hold up when we compare it to known behavior, we don't keep it. So before we get too far into it, if you're really enjoying this kind of content and breakdown, you want to help the show grow, take a second to like the episode, share it with somebody who spends some time in the woods, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can join the membership. And that's what helps keep us doing the research and putting episodes like these together. So, I apologize, I'm still fighting that cold. So let's talk about the Smokies. If you've spent any time there, which Robbie spent more time than I have, but I spent some pretty good time up there, you already know what makes it different. It's the terrain. It seems to fold in on itself. Your line of sight disappears faster than you expect. Sound doesn't always come from where you think it does. And once you step off the trail, it doesn't take long before distance and direction start getting a touch fuzzy. And that's exactly why this area matters. It's a place where people can misidentify things, but it's also a place where we can test those reports properly, because the environment gives us something to measure against. The cases we're pulling tonight came from documented reports in and around the park, especially in Sevier County, where we got multiple Class A sightings over time. That gives us something to work with, not just one story on its own, but reports we can compare it to. And the one thing we're starting with sets the baseline for everything we're going to be doing tonight. This is a reported road crossing from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park back in 1970. That was the year I was born. Good Lord, that was a long time ago. 2 witnesses, daylight conditions, and a clear look at something crossing the road upright with a stride set that they said didn't match a bear. That's BFRO report 23645. So you can look at it yourself if you like. But now, before anybody jumps ahead, we're going to run the same way that we run every case. What else could it be? Because in this environment, your baseline is always known wildlife. And at the top of that list is black bears. If a bear explains it, we'll say it does. That's not optional. That's part of doing this kind of investigation honestly. So here's how this goes tonight. We're going to lay out the encounters. We're going to test what the witnesses say against real world behavior. And then we're going to see what's left, if anything, without forcing it. This is an open investigation. We're not here to prove anything one way or the other, but we're also not going to ignore patterns when they show up. And I'll tell you this going in. Some of the details in the reports are familiar to us, what we call patterns. So stuff we've been talking about for a couple of years. Sorry about that. But that doesn't prove anything by itself. But it does make them worth taking a hard look at. All right, let's start with the road crossing. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Highway 441. Let's walk through what was reported, how it moved, what conditions were like, and whether it holds up. Robbie, you want to take us into the first segment?
Segment 1, the 1970 road crossing, Smoky Mountains. All right, let's walk through this one the way we would any real call. The case comes out of the BFRO Class A report tied to a 1970 sighting in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, right along Highway 441, not far from the park entrance. It's listed as report number 23645, as DA said earlier. And like we said, if you want to take a look at it, it's there. And we'll have that in the show notes for you to read for yourself. Now, what you've got here is about as straightforward as things get on paper. It means, there's no embellishment. It's just what we read is what it is. There's nothing added on top of it. So there's 2 people in the vehicle in daylight conditions moving at a steady speed on a paved road. No weather issues, no darkness, no distance distortion from being way out in the timber. They come around a curve and something steps out on the right side of the road and crosses in front of them. It doesn't run, it doesn't bolt, it just walks. According to the report, the witnesses describe it as tall, approximately over 7 feet, covered in hair, moving upright with a long stride and crossing the road in a way he said didn't match anything he'd ever seen before. Now let's slow it down a bit and start looking at the details instead of just the description. First thing you got to look at is the environment. That stretch of 441 runs through heavy timber areas, but right along the road, you still got a decent amount of open space compared to the deep woods. What that means is the little pull-offs that you get on all these nice scenic mountain roads. There's a good bit of area. The timber don't come right down to the edge of the road. You're not looking at layers of brush. You're not trying to piece together something through gaps in the trees. If something steps out on the road, you're going to see it clean, even if it's fast. The second thing is the angle. They're in a vehicle moving towards it, and it crosses perpendicular to them. That's one of the better conditions for judging stride and posture, because you're seeing lateral movement, not something coming at you or moving away at an angle. I mean, they were moving this way and it was moving this way. So that, as it says, that's a really good way to get your judgment on stride. Now here's where the report gets interesting. The witnesses said that they initially tried to tell themselves it might have been a bear, but the way it moved didn't line up with that. Specifically, the stride length and the way the arms were swinging is what struck them as odd. So let's pressure test that, because this is exactly where the most of these cases either hold up or fall apart. Black bear can stand upright. We know that. That's not up for debate. And they can take steps upright as well, especially when they're trying to get a better view or orientate themselves. At a distance or for a short window, they can absolutely look wrong to somebody who's not expecting it. So if this is a bear, we should expect a couple of things. We should expect it to drop back down to all fours pretty quickly. We should expect a shorter, more unsteady upright movement not a long, consistent stride across a roadway, and we should expect some kind of transition before it disappears into cover. Now, according to this report, that's not what they describe. What they describe is something that maintained its posture across the road, covered ground quickly, and continued into the brush on the other side without that kind of shift. That doesn't automatically make it unknown, but it does mean we don't just casually write it off as a bear and move on. This is where the experience comes into play. I'm not saying that's proof, that's just context. If you spent time around black bears, you get used to their movement. Even the ones that act a little off, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of jittery in their movements, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Even the ones that act a little off still have a certain way that they carry themselves. A bear's going to move like a bear's going to move. Their balance, their gait, the way their weight shifts is consistent enough that once you've seen it enough times, you recognize it pretty quick. So when somebody says something felt off about the way it moved, that's not evidence by itself, but it's something you flag to look at closer. Now let's talk about time on target. Anybody that's done any shooting knows what time on target means. This wasn't a glimpse out at a distance. This wasn't a roadway crossing in front of a moving vehicle, or this was a roadway crossing in front of a moving vehicle with two witnesses watching the same event. That means even if it was only a few seconds, it was a clear few seconds, and that kind of exposure window does carry more weight than somebody seeing something off through the trees. On the other side of that, we've still got limitations. No photos, no physical evidence, no tracks documented in the report, no follow-up investigation that produced anything you can point to beyond the witness account. So we're right in that space where the report is solid enough to analyze, but not strong enough by itself to confirm anything on its own. So that's the line we're standing on, not dismissing it, not promoting it, just holding it where it belongs. Now, here's why the case matters for the rest of the episode. It gives us the baseline: upright movement, road crossing, stride length, which is a key detail, and a witness specifically comparing it to known wildlife and saying that it didn't match that known wildlife. Because as we move forward, what we're looking for isn't just more sightings. We're looking to see if the same kind of movement shows up again and again in other reports from the same region, or if it falls apart once you start stacking other cases side by side. So that's the first one, BFRO report number 23645, 1970, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Now let's open it up a little bit. So, DA, the roadway factor. How much weight do you give a sighting that happens on pavement versus deep woods?
I don't know. It depends on the sighting itself. I've taken plenty of credible sighting reports that I only saw it for a few seconds. It crossed the road in front of my car. I really judge the sighting more on the individual than the location, because there are a lot of even daytime road crossings.
Yep, that's a fair estimate. So upright movement duration. We know bears can stand up, but how long do they realistically stand up and stay upright while moving?
Well, that's a question I was planning to ask you. Yes, we all know that bears are capable of walking on their hind legs, but Robbie, looking at just from a tracking standpoint, how different would the tracks of a bear on its hind legs be from something that's normally bipedal? Because bears don't walk well on their back legs, even if they're if they're good at it, they're not good at it. And
the thing is, from a tracking standpoint, like you're asking, if a bear's walking on its hind legs, the way a bear's hind legs are designed to move, they're designed to move when it's on all fours. Yes, it can move when it's upright, but it's not going to walk in a linear pattern like we do. It's going to walk like this, because it has to shift its weight. Think back to any movie you've seen with a bear walking on its hind legs, or any National Geographics or anything like that, and you see that bear coming towards the camera, it's shifting its weight side to side because it has to shift its weight to move that back foot off the ground. It's not designed to be able to pick its foot up and put that foot down while still keeping all the balance on that back foot that's off the ground.
Yeah,
so that's why it
hips aren't
shuffles
designed
like
to move
that.
that way.
And if you ever watch, most of the time its feet don't move much higher than that off the ground because it's just not designed to move that way for a long period of time. Short, very short, increments of time that a bear is going to stand up and walk on its hind legs. And that's something that if you've seen it, if I have to put a distance on it, I'd say probably no more than 10 yards. And that's being very, very liberal with that estimate, I believe. Probably not that far.
To answer your question, they can move fairly quick, but if they're trying to move rapidly, they will drop to all fours, simply because that's the way they're designed to move. If you're running from a bear, it's not going to chase you on its hind legs. If it's after prey, it's on all fours because it can cover the ground. It more gallops like a horse than it does walk like a person. So on its hind legs, it's just awkward.
And I think I kind of answered the stride length question in that in my answer, because like I said, the bear's hind legs are not designed to linearly it's a hard word to say, move and take a long step away from its body. It's going to be short, shuffly steps. So stride length on a bear walking upright is going to be shorter than a normal human because they're just not designed to move that way. So back to you for witness reaction, DA. The fact they considered it a bear first and then rejected that. What do you make of that?
Well, if there's someone that's familiar with that area at all, I'm going to give them points for credibility because, if you live in the Smokies, well, heck, when you and I were in what is it?
Pigeon Forge.
Pigeon Forge. When we were in Pigeon Forge, there were bears walking into town. So if you live in that area, you're familiar with what a black bear looks like. So if they immediately thought black bear and then dismissed it, I'd give them some pretty serious credibility on that, simply because they know what a bear looks like.
Well, you can't drive 5 feet in any of those places in town without seeing a cutout or a picture or something of so even if you're not from that area, you are going to know what a black bear looks like because you're going to see plenty of. I mean, that restaurant that we went and ate at, there's wood carvings of black bears. I mean, so you would be familiar with what a black bear looks like.
I'm going to guess if you live in Sevier County, you know what a black bear looks like.
Yes, you definitely do. I mean, I've seen videos of black bear walking across the street in downtown Gatlinburg, right there at the conference center where we were at. I mean, literally just like right down the street from that.
Well, that hotel that we stayed in,
Margaritaville,
sitting out on our balcony, we were watching bears playing in that little creek right down there.
Oh, yeah.
They were there in broad daylight.
And up in Cades Cove, which is not far from there either. I mean, you can get out and go sit on the picnic tables down there when you were able to go down there, and you could watch them walk through the woods literally just across the creek from you at maybe 20 yards max.
Norma, you're absolutely right. And if you live in a wooded area, especially if there are black bears in your area, you're going to get pretty familiar pretty quick with what they look like.
So, staying with you on this, the time exposure, a few seconds of clear observation versus a quick glimpse in the brush. What's the difference, and how does that kind of change the factors or change the validity or maybe not validity?
If you see something, even if you get a pretty good look at it in the brush, it's not a clear, unobstructed view. If you saw it crossing the road, you're not looking at it through the brush. You're not looking at it through the trees. even if you only see it for a few seconds, you've got a full, confirmed, unobstructed view of this thing. So I'd say at that point, you've probably, can safely rule out bear if your brain's saying that's not a bear. In the woods, yes, I could see how a silhouette in the woods could be misconstrued. However, a lot of people still get very good visual sightings. Like that night down in Moon Valley. Even though it was pitch black out, you and I couldn't see a thing. Doc lit it up with thermal and was seeing, full upper torso leaning out from behind that tree, not 20 yards from us. So
Yep.
yeah, it is possible to get an unobstructed view even in the woods. However,
But you have to have the equipment for it.
You got to have the equipment for it, and you've got to have the time. Most of the time, people see something like that, some big dark shadow on the trail. They either back away or they just as Doc would say, unask the AO in a hurry, because most people aren't equipped or no, what's the word I'm looking for? Have the fortitude to press forward to try to get a better look.
Well, and too, if
we're
you're
not the
not
brightest bulbs in the pack because we keep going.
If you're not out there looking for that like we are, and it catches you unexpectedly, we know what we're out there looking for. I'm not saying we know what we're doing, because there'd be plenty of people would argue with that statement. But if we know what we're looking for, we're not, we're not out there looking for squirrels and running across Bigfoot. It makes a difference because you're mentally prepared for what you're, or at least you're
you're also going to factor in the person. If you've got a person that is out camping and they grew up in, say, downtown Chicago, and this is the first time they've ever set foot in the woods, I'm going to take sightings with a grain of salt because they're not familiar with the woods. If they've got like video proof or they found a footprint or something like that, that changes things. But somebody that's spent their entire life in a city is not going to have that same sort of reaction to wildlife that most of us have. Great case in point was when I went camping with a bunch of buddies of mine up in Rocky Mountain National, and none of them had heard a bugle blow before, an elk bugle before, and they were all freaking out. I'm like, guys, stop waking me up. That's just an elk.
Yep, and I was thinking of that exact story when you were starting to tell it. I was like, that's exactly that's a perfect example of that.
So stride length, Robbie. Talk about the stride on something that would be, say, roughly 7 to 8 feet tall that's adapted for bipedal movement versus a black bear anyway, only going to be 5.5 to 6 feet for a biggin. How it's going to walk. Talk about the stride.
Oh, I mean, you could have the biggest bear in the world, and its stride length is not going to. It's going to be less than you or I.
Because well, there's some of those Bigfoot sightings that we've taken where they said the stride length was like 6.5, 7 feet.
Yeah,
ain't no bear alive making that stride.
No,
not on 2 legs. It ain't.
Yeah, like I said before, just go on YouTube and put in bear walking on hind legs and watch videos of bears walking on their hind legs.
It's ungainly.
Yeah, because like I said before, they're just not designed to do that. They can, but that's not where they're comfortable. It's like, there are certain fish, the mud skipper can walk out of water, but it sure isn't as graceful walking across the mud as it is swimming in the water, because that's not what it's designed to do. It can, but it's not designed to, or that's not its strong suit. That's not what it excels at. Same thing with a bear. It stands up on its hind legs. I mean, there's dogs that we've seen videos of that have no front legs that have taught themselves to walk on their back legs or in help from their owners, I'm sure, but it's not as graceful or as fluid as when it's on all fours. So to me, that's them talking about it crossing the road quickly and with a long stride. That to me is enough to say, okay, it's not a bear.
I've got another one for you. This one this one might be something that the folks at home would be thinking about, especially like, for example, people that don't track, that don't know how to track. Um, just when it's crossing a road like that, obviously it's not going to leave any tracks, but it could on either side. Can you describe for folks the conditions it takes to leave a good track? Because not every location is going to be someplace you can find one.
Yeah, I mean, some people talk about, well, why do you only find a partial track? Why this? Why that? And a lot of this, I think, goes to what we've talked about the way their feet are designed. I think they have basically, like, lack of a better term, a big pillow on the bottom of their feet, just kind of like an elephant. It's designed to disperse that weight, and I think the mid-tarsal brake kind of helps out in that. And there again, this is my opinion. This is not, I'm not Dr. Meldrum or anything like that. That's not my area of expertise. It's just based on what I've seen and what I've kind of put together, that I think that mid-tarsal brake allows, when they go to put the foot down, instead of coming down, like we come down heel, primary point of impact, and the foot just, there's no bend in it when it hits. They can come down and then they can kind of put that foot, and there's that bit of space. So when they press the weight down, that mid-tarsal brake is kind of acting like a shock absorber or spring or whatever you want to call it. So they're not putting, like when we go to step down and put our weight on our foot, it's distributed across the entire area of the foot. So when you make a track with your entire foot. I think a lot of times why you get partial tracks, number one, like DA was talking about the conditions, you may have ground that's really hard packed, gravel, whatever, that's not going to be conducive to a track. You're not always going to have a track trap, which, like I've explained before, track traps, stuff like sand, snow, mud, things that are just wet grass, anything that's going to really take a good print. But if you've got a really hard packed ground around you, there's not going to be much of a track. But even so, in things like that, I think that limits how much of a track that you're going to get anyway, because I just think that's the way their feet are designed. They're just designed for stealth. They're designed to be able to move without leaving much telltale signs behind.
Now, Robbie, you had a personal sighting when you were a kid, and we've also had stuff that we've encountered in the woods. For you, what lines up about this particular report? What sounds right? What doesn't sound right? To me, this one has. I'll let you go first. I'm not going to get off on.
Right off the bat, the stride, moving quickly, upright, crossing the road. I mean, to me, there's only two things that could have been: a person or not a person. And if it was a person, we wouldn't be. They wouldn't have reported this, and it wouldn't have gone to the BFRO. And so obviously they knew it wasn't a person.
Thank you, Kim.
Tall, covered with hair, long arms swinging, long legs, long stride, crossed the road quickly, right on into the trees. To me, that just all of those
rang
factors.
True. The duration of the sighting rang true. The behavior rang true. It didn't look at him. It didn't stop and pose in the road. It just very quickly moved across the road without making eye contact.
It was
and
doing
that rings
it
true
does.
with so many other, especially daytime sighting encounters that are road crossings.
Yeah, to me, it was out there doing what it does.
Hillary, I have not seen that footage. If you've got that link, could you send it to my email? I'd like to see that. But with that, between reports we've taken and field experience, I would say that this, personally for me, this story, it hits the right boxes. There's nothing really that rings crazy about it. There's nothing outside of the norm about it. It matches up with literally hundreds of other reports.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if it was off in the woods, they were driving by at 90 miles an hour and just happened to see something beside them. Okay, maybe it could be mistaken identity, but car moving towards it moving perpendicular to them across the road in front of them, clear unobstructed view. You know, it just like you said, everything kind of rings true on it.
Exactly. But with that established as the baseline, let's go ahead and jump into the next one. You ready?
Yep, let's go.
All righty. This one is was a cabin observation. Also, Sevier County, Smoky Mountains area. All right, and let's stack this next one against what we just talked about. This one comes out of Sevier County, same general region around the Smoky Mountains, and again, we're dealing with a Class A visual report. This is listed as the BFR report 78930, so you can look this one up if you'd like to. This one's a lot more recent. You've got multiple witnesses sitting outside at a rental cabin in the mountains. Middle of the day, weather was clear. So again, no darkness, no bad conditions, nothing that should be interfering with what they're seeing. They were sitting there just talking and relaxing, and they heard movement in the woods. That got their attention, which is normal. I mean, any of us who's sitting around a campfire, if we hear movement, we're going to try to figure out what it is. People hear something in the timber, and they start looking for it. One of them looks out into the tree line about 100 yards out and sees what he describes as a dark figure, basically head and shoulder profile, partially behind the bushes. It's not moving fast. It's not crossing anything. It was just there. Now, this next part is the part that really you should pay attention to. He doesn't react right away like it's something unusual. First thing he does is try to explain it. Thinks maybe it's just a shadow, maybe a stump, maybe his eyes are playing tricks on him. And that's a good sign from a credibility standpoint because he's not jumping straight to conclusions. Then he locks onto it. And according to the report, he's looking at this thing for a couple of minutes. Not seconds, minutes. And that's a completely different exposure window than what we had with that road crossing. He describes it as having a round head shape, dark hair, no real facial detail beyond the outline, but distinct enough that he keeps going back and looking at going back to the thought that this looks like something alive. It's not just a fixed object. Then he does something important. He looks away on purpose. Basically tries to reset his eyes and make sure he's not looking at something that isn't there. And when he looks back, it's gone. Not moving off, not walking away, just gone. And a short time after that, they hear the movement again, specifically trees cracking in the same general direction. So let's slow that down and break it apart, because this one is different from the first case in a couple of really important ways. Sorry about that. First one was movement across the road, yeah. But this one is concealment. Whatever was there wasn't out in the open. It was using cover, staying partially hidden, and not making any obvious movement while being observed. Second was duration. First witnesses saw something for a few seconds in motion. This one is watching something stationary for a much longer period of time, long enough to question it, test it, and go back to it. And that's a whole different type of observation. Now let's put the same pressure on it. If this was a bear, what does that look like? A bear at 100 yards, partially obscured, can absolutely look like a dark mass with a shape but no detail, especially in mixed light where you've got shade and bright sun. The problem comes in with posture and behavior. If it's a bear, you'd expect some kind of movement during that time. Head movement, shifting weight, eventually dropping down and moving off, especially if it's aware of people nearby. But according to this report, it stayed still long enough to be observed for a couple of minutes and then disappeared during the moment when the witness looked away. Now, that doesn't break the bear explanation completely, don't get me wrong, but it does force you to tighten it up a bit, because now you're talking about something that's either very still, very aware, or both. And the next piece is the sound after. Tree movement. Something moving through the timber, enough to make noise. We don't have tracks. We don't have anything physical again. So just like the first case, we land in that same space where we can analyze it, but we can't confirm it. Now let's put these two side by side. First case gives you upright movement across open ground. Second case gives you stationary observation from cover, followed by movement after visual contact is broken. Those are two completely different behaviors. And that's where this either starts to build something or it starts to fall apart. Because if we're seeing the same kind of movement, the same kind of posture, the same kind of interaction across both cases, you'd start leaning toward a consistent pattern. But here we've got something entirely different. One is exposed movement, the other is concealment. So now the question changes, not is this real? The question becomes, are we looking at the same type of event in both cases? Or are we looking at two completely different explanations that just sound similar on the surface? And that's where the pressure really starts, because the next case that we're going to be talking about brings both of these together. Or does it break it? We'll have to see here in a minute. But Robbie, why does this one strike you as more unnerving than the first one?
Well, I think you kind of said it in the, because I think it shows patience and intelligence, because it was patient enough to be still while it knew it was being watched, and then as soon as it saw the witness turn away, it used that moment to move.
Yeah, that would definitely indicate intelligence.
Yeah, and to the witness's standpoint or credit, I think that's a that's a very, very smart thing to do, because I've talked about doing stuff like that before too, like standing there and just watching in the dark for about 15 minutes before you really even start, just letting your eyes adjust, get rid of the eye pollution from, like, if you're in a car driving to a spot that you're going to get out and watch, because you got lights inside the car, you might be passing cars, you need to let your eyes adjust. The same thing right there. He was like, okay, I'm going to look away and let my brain reset, basically let my eyes reset, and I'm gonna look back. And it's kind of like what we were talking about doing when we saw that thing out in the river, the James River.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, okay, we need to go back out there during the day and look and see if whatever we saw was still there. Because if we were seeing
it's not there.
exactly, but we all said, if that was a tree stump that was playing tricks on our eyes, we go back out there and it's sitting there, we'll know. But we go back out there and there's nothing there, we'll also know, which is what happened. And so I think that's a very valid thing and practice to do. You're looking at something, and we all know that your eyes can play tricks on you, especially when you're looking in deep woods and things like that. Thing when it's dark and there's shadows, and I don't mean necessarily dark outside, I mean dark inside the woods that you're looking into. Things can play tricks on your, different shapes and things like that, because the way our brain works, it's going to start picking out patterns. So sometimes it can unintentionally.
Yeah, pareidolia is a thing.
Yeah.
But it's like with the Joe Bolt footage. When we discovered we had something on camera, first thing we did was go back out there to try to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Try to find what it could have been.
And
thank you, Miss Lene.
So to me, that's kind of that is also something that's telling about it, is the fact that he thought enough about, okay, and is my mind playing tricks on me? I'm going to reset myself.
Right.
And he didn't just continue to sit there and stare and let the thoughts build up in his mind. Or what am I looking at? Am I looking at this? Am I looking at that? He was like, I'm reset. Oh crap, it's not there. My mind wasn't playing tricks on me. There was something there.
Right. And that's another thing about it, the duration. I've seen plenty of bears, and yes, bears will stand still when they're looking around, but most wild animals will get cagey and move. That's every deer I've ever got deer hunting, I got it because it moved. So if this thing's sitting completely still until he looked away, either that's a heck of a coincidence or that shows obvious intelligence. And I'm kind of leaning toward the intelligence side.
That absolutely. I mean, because, and I guess something else that's kind of unnerving about it is, and it's not really hit on, but apparently he wasn't just watching it; it was watching him. It was watching him watch it, because if it wasn't, then why did it move when he turned his head away?
And I like that in this one, the witness tried to find an explanation, and it wasn't like he just went Bigfoot. He tried to figure out what it could be before he said, "I don't know what the heck that was."
Yeah, I think that's a. Like
Well,
I said,
like with your sighting when you were a kid, Robbie, I guarantee you, even though you were a kid, you're running those processes in your head. What is that? Is that my uncle? Is that my dad? You know, you're trying to ask yourself, what could that be? And when all those little check boxes got checked off, that nope, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. That's when lizard brain kicks in and goes, monster.
yeah. Well, same thing with Steve when we were out at Combs Ferry, when he was looking at that deer hide in the tree. We sat there and watched him do that. We sat there and watched him tick those boxes off in his head.
What could do this?
What could do this?
And then the realization that it took something with hands. Same with the tree trap.
Yep.
That wasn't there by accident. So, what kind of patterns are we seeing here? And I'm not just saying compare, story 1 to story 2. What kind of patterns are we seeing here that we recognize from our own investigations and from other sighting reports?
Well, intelligence is one that stands out right off the bat. I mean, I don't think either of us have ever thought, Doc and Steve included, that it was a big dumb animal out there.
Right.
I think we've always been on the side of this is something that's got a high amount of intelligence.
Oh, clearly, yeah. Well, so look at the Moon Valley incident alone. Just take that by itself. That was clearly intelligence, the way they were hurting us.
Yeah.
Because if we'd have gone much farther, they'd have had us completely cut off from the truck.
And I don't know if that was as much to their intelligence or our unintelligence, but
our lack of it.
Yeah, or a combination of both.
Maybe a little bit of both. We did get a little farther away from the truck than I thought we were.
Yeah, probably a little further away than we should have been.
I kind of blame Doc because he's the one that pointed it out, and of course, me and you are going to go look.
Very true. Yeah.
But that pattern, that way it was sitting there, not moving, observing, that we've heard that pattern in 100 other stories.
Yeah, very much. And another thing I think we're seeing is I guess patience would be a good way to put it. They're not in a hurry unless they are in a hurry.
Right. And that's a whole different set of behaviors.
Yeah. Because if they're in a hurry, there's usually a reason for it. And a lot of times the reasons might not be good.
That's a fact. But like you brought up when the night on Combs Ferry, Steve, we could see Steve doing that math. You could see it in his eyes, and that was pretty much the time he was. Well, that was the last event he went on. He's like, Nope, no longer on the fence. You guys have fun. Sorry about that. Be glad this stupid cold finally leaves me alone. But as far as credibility goes, I think this story's solid. I don't see any red flags. I don't see anything that makes me think, this is just somebody looking for attention. This is somebody who was at a cabin who saw something they couldn't explain.
Yeah.
And they did try to explain it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, when he looked away and looked back and it was gone, the fact that he's looking for it and all of a sudden he hears more movement in that general area. There was
clearly something over there.
Yeah. So,
could it have been a bear? Yes, there is still a good chance this could have been a bear. However, when you look at the known bear behaviors, that kind of makes that a little less likely, but it is still entirely possible that what this guy saw was a bear. He said it was a distance of about 100 yards. It was partially obscured. It was a dark shape, and he couldn't see facial features. So yes, could still be a bear. Not gonna say definitively this was a Bigfoot sighting, but I would say it has the characteristics of one.
Yeah.
I'd say credibility-wise, the witness is credible, but we can't say with 100% certainty that this was a true Bigfoot sighting, but he clearly saw something, and from the sounds in the woods, there was something there.
Yeah, and so I would say, due to the distance and the fact that it's in the woods, that it makes it a lot more possible that what he saw was a bear. But I agree with you that nothing about him jumps out as uncredible.
Yeah, I think it holds a lot of water. I don't think he's doing any signs of deception in this. I don't think the guy was trying to get his 15 minutes of fame. I just think he saw something he couldn't explain. Could it have been a Bigfoot? Yeah. Me personally, I think from the behaviors and the way it didn't move and it waited until he looked away before it did move, I'd say it's a high likelihood, but I won't dismiss the possibility that this was just a bear.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I tend to think that based on what he described, that's probably what he saw. But, very well still could have been a bear.
Yeah, absolutely could have.
Because just because we have not observed bears act that way doesn't mean that it's impossible for one to sit there and be still for a minute or two.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we're getting ready to get to the top of the hour, so we're going to have to take our first break. But now we've got two cases on the table. One moving through open ground, completely upright, crossing a road, and one holding a position in cover, watching and then disappearing. Two different environments, two different types of exposure, and two very different ways of moving through the same region. So here's the problem. If this is all misidentification, those explanations should line up. And right now, they don't. Because the next case we're going to look at either pulls these two together or it forces you to throw one of them out completely. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be stepping into a trail encounter. And this one changes the way the movement shows up again. And we will be right back after a word from our sponsors, folks.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to research a haunted house can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. 2026 is off to a great start, and it's almost time. With many exciting predictions and the recent emphasis on a potential major planetary event occurring in April, it promises to be a super transformational month, and we couldn't be more excited to be in Hawaii during this shift to integrate new frequencies. Folks, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. April the 20th through the 24th, 2026, join us in Kona, Hawaii for Journey to Truth's very first vacation conference retreat. Enjoy 9 presenters over 5 days with ocean adventures with dolphins and whales and sacred sites and so much more. Experience Hawaii like never before. You will enjoy 5 days on the Big Island, so don't wait. Start planning your trip today at journeytotruth.online. That's journeytotruth.online. The paranormal field is changing, and now, more than ever, it's time for professionals to lead the way. Join the Oz Professional Paranormal Investigators Association, a global network of serious investigators dedicated to raising the standard of real paranormal research. Access professional certifications, advanced training, and courses exploring true investigation, psychic phenomena. If you're a real paranormal investigator, be a part of the group defining the future. Join today. Visit ozinstitute.org. That's ozinstitute.org.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DARoberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the dead rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and man's marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of DARoberts.
And we are back, folks. Welcome back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Before the break, we laid out two of these cases side by side and started seeing how the behavior just didn't quite line up. Now we're going to push that just a little bit farther, because up to this point, everything we've talked about has either been at a distance or moving through an area and gone just as fast as it showed up. Next one changes that. Now we're looking at something crossing the road or sitting back in the timber. Now we're not looking at something crossing the road. We're sitting back in the timber. We're looking at something that stays put long enough to be watched and reacts when it knows it's being watched. Let's take a look at this next one. Robbie, you want to take us into this one?
Sure. Segment 3 is the face level observation, Smoky Mountains adjacent area. All right, let's pick this back up and push a little further. This next one doesn't come off a road, and it's not somebody sitting on the back porch of a cabin looking out across the distance. This one puts a person on foot moving through the woods, and that changes everything. This is another Class A report coming out of the Smoky Mountain region near the Tennessee and North Carolina line, tied to the Tellico Plains side. It's listed as BFRO report number 77933. Now here's the setup. You've got a witness out in the woods in the daytime. Part of that group that had been moving around, checking areas. He breaks off slightly, starts looking around terrain features, trying to see if anything's been moving through there. So he's already scanning the environment. He's not distracted. He's not driving. He's not sitting still. He's actively looking, and that matters because now we're dealing with somebody who's already keyed in on the moment and detail, on movement and detail. He looks out across the ravine, roughly 50 yards, and sees what he first thinks may be a dark spot or a stump, just something out of place against the background. Same thing we saw in the last case. Initial assumption, tries to explain it away, then it changes. He starts picking up detail, not a full body and not a silhouette, but a face. And that's kind of what reminds me of my thing. What happened is I can kind of remember looking and seeing the shadow, and then all of a sudden the face kind of coming into detail. So I identify with this so far. He describes as being able to see the outline of a head, eyes, brow ridge, nose shape, not perfectly clear, but enough to recognize that he's not looking at a tree or a shadow. And here's where it shifts again from the other two cases. This isn't a quick look, and it's not a stationary object that vanishes when you look away. According to the report, this thing is looking back at him, and it stays there for a long moment, or long enough for movement. He describes it turning slightly, then coming back to face him again. It's like it's tracking something or checking something out, and then locking back in. That's interaction, not aggressive, not charging, but aware. Still kind of lining up with what mine was. Two direction awareness, and that's different from both the first cases. So now we've got 3 separate behaviors that are on the table: road crossing, exposed movement, cabin observation, concealment and delayed movement, and now face level observation with apparent awareness and minor movement while being watched. So we slow this down again and run the same test. Could this be a bear? At 50 yards in partial cover, a bear's head could absolutely look like a dark mass with some shape to it. Even the snout and brow can blur depending on the light and the angles. And anybody that's been through my tracking class knows how light plays a very big part in how you see things. But this is where the behavior starts stacking. The bear's not going to sit there, hold a visual lock like that for any real length of time, especially if it knows it's been seen. Bears either disengage, move off, or shift positions. They don't usually stay in a back and forth awareness like loop. Like you stare at me, I stare at you, you stare at me, I stare at you. Doesn't eliminate it completely, but it keeps tightening the window. Because now we're not just looking at about what something looks like. We're talking about what it does, and behavior is harder to fake than a shape. As you can say, oh, I saw this shape and I saw this shape. But coming up with the behaviors that are consistent over decades or even centuries is a little bit harder. All right, let's talk about the terrain. A ravine that gives you elevation difference. That means he's looking across, but not straight down or straight ahead, which can actually help with visibility. You get a contrast behind what you're looking at, and that's exactly what he describes: a dark shape against a lighter background that makes it stand out. So again, conditions for observations are not bad. This isn't a worst case. This isn't a worst case sighting. But on the other hand, same problems we've had with every case so far. No physical evidence was pulled. No confirmed tracks that were documented on the specific movement. No follow-up that gives anything that you can put your hands on. So once again, we're dealing with something that holds up just enough to examine, but not enough to confirm. And that's been the line so far. So step back and look at all 3 together. We've got upright movement. We've got concealment. Now we've got awareness, which I can kind of argue. I think we had awareness in the second case too, to an extent.
I would agree with that.
But for the sake of what this is saying, this actually keys in more on the awareness. 3 different behavior types, all in the same general region. So the question is it's not getting easier. It's kind of getting tighter, because now we're asking, are these 3 different explanations that just happen to look similar when people try to describe them? Or are these 3 parts of a larger pattern that only show up when you get enough reports side by side? So basically what that's saying is, can you look at these 3 reports individually and say, yeah, each one of these stack up? Or do you have to start having them all together to show, oh yeah, okay, now they stack up? So that's where it gets interesting, because the next case we're going to get into it in passive. We've been passive up to this point. It's not something watching from a distance. It's not crossing a road and moving on. It involves proximity and reaction.
I think the most interesting part about this is the face. He described seeing a face. And now I've said lots of people look at pictures and pareidolia will pop out if you stare at an image long enough. But when you're seeing it with your naked eyes, to me that seems a lot less like pareidolia, because generally your brain's trying to process patterns. But I'm not saying it couldn't be pareidolia, but I'm saying him spotting a face with his naked eyes instead of staring at a bunch of leaves on an image until a shape comes out. I think this one kind of lends more to the fact that he was looking at something with a face.
I'm going to tell you, this is, I mean, I kind of got cold chills reading this because I really identify with it, because that's exactly how it's like looking at something like, and you just said it earlier, ticking all them boxes, looking at something and not knowing what you're looking at, and then suddenly this face starts coming into focus, and it's like the brow ridge and the eyes and the nose and the lips, not like clear like a photograph that you're looking at like this, but clear enough to know, oh crap, I'm not looking at something that I've ever looked at before. And and the fact that I know for a fact this thing was looking at me, just like this guy describes it, he knows it was looking at him. Same thing. I mean, there was eye contact made between me and this thing, just like he said. So I really identify with this encounter, because it hits a little close to home for me, the way it stacked up for him.
Norma asked what part of the country we're located in. Robbie's actually not far from the Smokies. He's in northwestern South Carolina. I'm in Missouri.
Yeah, he's a little bit further away from it than I am.
A little bit. But the eye contact, this is different than before. Most animals don't make eye contact, or if they do, they react. They'll move, they'll growl, they'll grunt. It's generally not a good idea to make eye contact with a predator, but this one held his vision, which is interesting.
And like I said, I touched on the movement while being watched, turning and then reorientating back to him. It's like I'm looking for something, but that thing's still looking at me.
Right.
Yep, it's still looking at me. Yep, it's still looking at me. I mean, it's like it kept coming back to him.
Right. And if he was describing the face, that to me just kind of rules out a bear right there. Because looking at a bear's face is kind of like looking at a dog. You're not going to mistake that for a person or human-like.
Right. It's kind of like think about old Alamo Joe, what he talked about in the werewolf series. My daddy said you can handle anything if you can look it in the eye. If you can look it in the eye.
It's a fact.
But I'm not sure Alamo Joe's daddy ever locked eyes with a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's a fact. So, what do you think about the terrain in this particular instance? Was it an advantage? Do you think it improved its visibility or distorted
I think so.
perception?
Based on how he described it, where he's got something darker against a lighter backdrop, that makes it stand out. I think if it hadn't been moving, he might have just, if he hadn't caught that movement, it might would have just faded into the background.
That's exactly what I was going to point out. If it hadn't been moving, it probably would have been like the Paul Freeman footage.
Yep.
It just would have blended in and he wouldn't have seen it.
Because he clearly said when he first looked over it, it was just a black mass, or a dark mass rather. Then when he looked back over it again, he's like, hey, something don't look quite right about that.
So with this, comparing this story to the second story, do you think that we're looking at different behaviors or just a different application of the same behavior?
I think different application of the same behavior, because I think, like I said, as I was reading it, I think we definitely showed awareness in that second video too. I think it goes a long way to, because if it was not aware, it wouldn't have moved when he turned his head. That's awareness. Because if it was just not aware that he was staring at it, you know, it would have moved when it moved and not cared whether he was looking away. Why did it wait till
In
he
this
looked
case,
away?
I think the likelihood this was a bear was very low. This one, that's not bear. He saw the face. You know, he described the face. To me, I think this one clearly, I don't believe this was a bear.
But
however, there's enough similarities to the second story where we're looking at a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, but there again, I totally agree with you. But still, is it possible that it was a bear? Yes, it's still possible.
It's still possible. But the
I
fact
think
that he was describing the face makes that
right.
far less likely.
I think it's getting further on the less likely side with the story, but without anything other than that, you still have to say, is it possible? Yes, it was possible, but I don't think it's possible, but not likely.
Yeah, I think that there's still a chance this was a bear, but I think it's far more likely that he saw something that, well, it had a face.
Yeah.
I keep going back to that, but saying it was a face, and then when you compare the behaviors and the way it was staying, you know, where it was watching him, observing him, I think this story with the added detail adds credibility to the last story. Because the behaviors are very similar. And these are two people that never met. Sorry about that. So what do you think, Rob? Do you think, as far as, well, I don't even really want to say like on a scale of 1 to 10 or anything like that. I just, how high would you rate this one for credibility?
Pretty high. I mean, there's nothing that jumps out that says to me that said, like I said, you know, just for argument's sake, I have to say, is it possible that it was a bear? Yes, it's possible, but I'm thinking at least in the 85 percentile, if not higher, that he saw the big guy instead of a bear.
I would agree. And again, I keep going back to this one detail, the description of the face. Him saying he saw a face. There's a difference between looking at a bear that's clearly got a snout and ears up on the sides of its head. But you wouldn't really describe, well, I guess you could still call it a face. But
here's a key detail to that. If it was a bear, he clearly said the thing was doing this.
Right.
So if it was a bear, when it turned this way, what's he going to see?
It's in the snout. It's all the profile. So, again, when you mention that detail, I think that even bumps it up a little higher, and that it's likely that it was something other than a bear.
Yeah, because if he was close enough to get or see the detail in the face that he describes he saw, then he would be close enough to when it was turning its head for a snout to be visible.
Now, let's take this one and compare it to other stories, other sightings we've both, spoken to people about, taken sighting reports, sightings we've read. Let's compare to that and look at the similarities. Are we seeing similarity of behavior, similarity of details in this story across the board?
Well, there's definitely similarities to the second one with the movement, the head movement, and the awareness. And then there were similarities in the first and the second stories with certain things. I mean, I maybe not the exact same similarities across all three stories, but all three stories have something similar with each other.
Right. There are details that overlap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely give this one a high marks for credibility, because we're looking at the established patterns of known behavior, and this fits within those parameters. It doesn't have anything way out there. He didn't do a backflip or do somersaults across the ravine. The behaviors were pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So, ready to jump into the next one?
Let's hit it.
All right. This is a close proximity encounter, also in the Smokies. We call this one an escalation case. So let's move on to this one. This is where things start getting a little tighter. Up to this point, everything we've looked at has had some distance built into it. Road crossings, observation from a cabin, watching from across a ravine. But this one kind of closes that distance. Now we're dealing with someone in the woods on foot, and something that doesn't just show up, it reacts. We're still in the same general area, the Smoky Mountain terrain, Tennessee side, and again, this one comes out of a Class A report, this time tied to a more recent report investigation in the Tellico Plains area. That's BFRO report 77933. Now here's the setup. The witness is out in the woods during the day with a group, and at some point he separates just enough to start examining the area on his own. He's looking at the terrain, looking for signs, checking for movement patterns. So again, this isn't somebody who's distracted. He's actively observing. He picks up what he initially thinks is just a dark shape off in the distance, about 50 yards across a ravine. Same pattern we've seen before. Doesn't jump to a conclusion, tries to explain it, but then he keeps looking. And the longer he looks, the more details start to come into focus. Now, we're not just talking about shape. We're talking about a face. He describes being able to see the eyes, the brow, the nose structure, and enough that he's no longer looking at something ambiguous. He knows he's looking at something with facial features. And here's where this one crosses into a different category. This isn't just an observation. This is awareness. According to the report, whatever he's looking at turns its head, looks off to the side, and then comes back and faces him again. That's not something that's just standing there. That's something taking in its surroundings while being observed. Now that we've moved beyond movement and beyond concealment and into interaction, and that's where things kind of get real narrow real fast, because now you got to ask yourself, what in that environment behaves like that? Could it still be a bear? Maybe. At that distance, in partial cover, visual distortion is still in play. A bear's head could present as a rounded shape with some structure depending on the angle and the light. But now you've got behavior stacked on top of that. A bear that knows it's being watched is not going to sit there and engage in that kind of back and forth peekaboo. Most of the time, it's going to move off, reposition, or break contact entirely. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen, but it pushes it a little further down the list. Now let's talk about what happens next. After this interaction, after he spent time watching it and confirming he's looking at something real, it eventually shifts enough that the visual contact is lost. And once again, just like we've seen before, there's no physical evidence recovered from that moment. No confirmed track line, no object left behind, nothing you can pick up and point to after the fact. So just like the others, we're left with a report that holds just enough detail to analyze, but not enough to confirm. That's consistent. Now let's take all four of those stages we've seen so far. We've got movement across open ground. We've got concealment and delayed movement. We've got visual awareness and interaction. And now we've got proximity close enough to start forcing reaction on both sides. That's progression. Not proof, but progression. And here's the problem. If these are all the same type of event, if they're all the same explanation, then the behavior should start lining up more and more as the deeper we go. And right now, we're not 100% there. We've got a lot of overlap. We've also got some differences, and the differences matter because differences are where explanations usually start breaking down. So now the question isn't just what was seen. The question is whether these behaviors belong together or whether we're grouping things that shouldn't be grouped. But the next case we're going to look at, it doesn't just involve awareness. It involves a reaction that forces distance. So, Robbie, what do you want to look about awareness versus curiosity?
I think the biggest difference between awareness and curiosity is you can have an animal be curious and maybe not react like it normally would. I mean, you see it in nature all the time. Whales swimming up next to boats, river otters coming up to fishermen while they're fishing on the riverbank. You know, that's curiosity. Now, are those creatures aware? Yeah, they're aware of us, but that's strictly curiosity, coming up to see what we are, what we're doing, what's going on. Why are we in their environment? But to me, awareness is like you said, looking at you and not just like glancing across you as it's out doing what it normally does. It's like focusing in, and
it's reasoning things out.
Yeah.
So when talking about the way this thing responded to him, that's not the way bears normally do things. I mean, again, I'm not saying that this wasn't a bear. What I'm saying is this is kind of very atypical for bear behavior. Bears don't generally, stick around once they realize you're there, especially blackies.
Yeah, I mean they're typically not as aggressive as any other bear species, and they don't want to be in proximity to humans any more than they have to be. So typically, if they know they're being watched, they know they've been seen, they're gonna, as Doc likes to say, unask the AO.
Yeah. So, what kind of pattern? What behaviors are we seeing consistent across these?
I hate to keep going back to it, but awareness is a big one that I've seen across all of them. Something that knows what's going on around it. It's not just out there existing and thinking, it realizes that humans are out there. Even with the first one they encountered, even though it didn't really get into that, it still had awareness because it got across the road quickly. It knew that car was coming, and it quickly got across the road. I mean, how many times have you seen squirrels and deer and possums and things like that run out in front of a car and stop? It was smart enough to realize I need to keep going. A lot of animals aren't smart when it comes to cars coming.
Your headlights hit a deer, it's stopping.
Yeah, same thing with a raccoon or a possum or squirrels. Yeah, so to me that screams awareness in itself.
Absolutely.
So I think awareness is definitely spread across all the encounters we've talked about.
So, what do you think proximity? How do you think that affected the behavior? Because this one was pretty close, less than 50 yards.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the closer we are, the more they're going to try to, I mean, for the most part, obviously there's some that they want that interaction to be a lot closer because they may have nefarious intentions. But I think, depending on what species you're dealing with, I think the proximity has a lot to do with it. If it's one that just doesn't want to be bothered, I think you're going to see more of the being still and, waiting for their opportunity to get out of there, versus some of them probably going to take that initiative to move closer to do whatever it is that they're wanting to do.
So what about consistency? Are we seeing consistency in behaviors here? I believe we are.
I think, yeah. Maybe in a consistency in the fact that there's definitely been awareness in all four.
The way it observed, the way it reacted.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a consistency across all four.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a consistent pattern of awareness and behavior patterns, and to me that's the best part about when you analyze multiple encounters side by side, is looking for those patterns, looking for those consistencies in behavior, And I'm not saying if a report didn't have any of these consistencies that it's that it's not factual, that it didn't happen. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is if we can continue to identify these behaviors, we can not only predict behavior but also start to predict where they're going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which is something we've been working on for some time. I think a lot of it has to do with the intent of the observer as well. None of these guys were actively hunting. I think if they'd been out there like deer hunting or something like that, might have had a different reaction if they saw it at all.
Yeah, especially the closer ones.
Norman says, I'm on the West Coast. Do you see consistencies and patterns between the encounters you guys in your area and what we may have here? There does seem to be a certain consistency across all zones on behaviors. There are certain behaviors that we're able to isolate in a lot of different areas of the U.S. and even Canada, Alaska, even from reports from Asia and the Yowie. There are certain behaviors that seem to be similar in all of them, but there is also unique behaviors in certain areas as well. Like, for example, look at the Florida skunk ape. Its behaviors have evolved because it spends so much time on extremely damp grounds, wet grounds, dealing with other large predators like alligators. So their behaviors are a little different. And in some parts of the country, they're far more aggressive than in other parts of the country. Like out in the Pacific Northwest, you don't hear a whole lot about violent encounters. Yes, there are some, Ape Canyon being one of the best ones. But I think that was a provoked attack. I think when they shot at one and wounded one, they drew that attack down on themselves. I don't think they would have been attacked otherwise. But you get some of the places like here in Missouri and down in Oklahoma, they get violent. I mean, some of the encounters are straight up violent. People have had cars damaged. People have had rocks thrown at their houses. The siege at Hanabi comes to mind quickly. Then our own experiences, like down in Moon Valley and Combs Ferry, they got aggressive, and I think that's kind of a regional consistency thing. But yeah, there are a lot of overlapping behaviors, no matter what part of the country you're in. But there are also regional patterns, and those are the ones we're trying to identify. Sorry, folks. Let's see. I was going to say something else. In this situation, what would you look for as a tracker? What would you look for to be able to locate where this thing had gone through, and not necessarily on the ground, but in the area? Explain how you would. Now, let's just say that, for great example, this was a person. And for those of you who are new to the show, Robbie's a man tracker. He's in law enforcement, been almost 30 years in law enforcement. He's a trained tracker for his department. That's what he does. He tracks down fugitives, and he's very good at it. So, Robbie, if that was a fugitive, what would be the things you would look for in that area to let you know they'd been there, and to help you find them?
Well, people like to talk about going in and leaving things untouched, but it is physically impossible to move through an area without leaving some kind of trace that you've been there. And that trace, we call it spoor. And whether that's, a gum wrapper, a Slim Jim wrapper, a break on a limb, something we call fresh meat, or a track, or hair that you left on a tree branch as you went past. There's something that's going to be left. So it's really no different looking for a fugitive versus looking for something like this. So it's just a matter of knowing what you're looking for. Because if I'm out there looking for an escaped convict, I'm not looking for 18-inch footprints. I'm not looking for tree breaks 10.5 feet off the ground. But if I'm looking for this thing, obviously I'm not looking for Jack Link Slim Jim packages, although according to the commercials, they like them. But you're not looking for the same items, but you're looking for the same type of things. You're looking for tree breaks where they moved through and broke limbs out of their way. But like I said, you may not be looking for them, 4.5 to 5 feet off the ground, where a normal person would be pushing limbs out of the way. You'd be looking probably a lot higher off the ground. You're looking for a lot larger track or scrape or rub on the ground for something like this than you would be if you're looking for a human. But like I said, same types of things, just not the exact same things. So, but you're looking for disturbances on the ground. You're looking for tree breaks. You're looking for anything that might have, like I said, hair that might have been rubbed off on a tree or on a branch, or on just anything that they might have crossed over. And that's something people may not think of. If they step over a fallen log, there may be hair on that log that come off their leg. It's just, if you know a general direction something's went, then there's things that you can find. You just have to know what to look for and how to look for it. Because like I tell everybody in classes, and Kevin can tell you that I say this all the time. Once you know what to look for, the ground never looks the same again. Once you see it, and once you know what it is you're looking for, it's kind of hard to unsee it.
Do you want to answer this question from Norma Carter?
Let's see. Do you see the type of trees? Okay. I think we've probably seen some stuff that we could say was stuff. I don't think we've ever, at least while we're together, we've never seen the trees put up in an X.
We have seen them bowed over, and we've seen a lot of bark stripped way up on a tree.
But as far as like actual tree structures that people talk about them making X's leaning up against a tree or laying on the ground or anything like that, I don't think I know I've never seen it. I don't think you have either. That I've ever heard.
Out by Eric's house, we found a bunch of it.
But I've never witnessed that part of it. Now, what DA's talking about trees being bent over, and I've seen when I was out with Mary Ann Zabel, we saw tree breaks about anywhere from 10 to 12.5 feet off the ground. And I'm not talking about like snap. I'm talking there were some of them that were spiral fractures where, it's been twisted in two separate directions and left hanging. Some broke clean off. Just I've seen all kinds of stuff like that. But as far as
Combs Ferry, we saw a lot of branches that were twisted pretty high.
Yeah.
And the bark had been stripped off that spruce tree about up to about 15 feet.
Yeah.
And I think the reason they stripped that spruce bark is it has medicinal content. The Native Americans have used spruce bark tea or chewed the bark directly. It has pain relieving properties. It also has a lot of other things like joints and things like that.
You sent pictures of that to William, and he said that's exactly what he thought it was.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've talked to several researchers here in the Ozarks that have all said that every time they found trees that have been deliberately put into bows, that it's always near medicinal plants. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of natural plants that have a lot of curative properties. But comparing all four of these stories so far, I think we really are seeing a good recognition of patterns. And that's kind of what we're all about here, because we use these patterns to not just predict behaviors in the future, but also allow us to help kind of understand where they're going to be at certain times of the year. Like, for example, here in the Ozarks, we seem to get the most activity between late fall and early spring. They seem to go deeper into the woods when it gets to the hotter months. That's not saying things don't happen. They're just a lot more common during the cooler months. Because I don't know if you've ever spent time in the Ozarks in the summer. Humidity around here kill you, and it's just pretty rough. So I can understand why they'd want to spend time like where there are more caves and thicker overgrowth of trees. But and then other areas, you've got a lot of activity in the high summer. And I think it just depends on where you're at. I think phases of the moon also has something to do with it. What about you, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just goes to strengthen our cave theory. That would be a great place during the warmer months or the hotter months.
Oh, absolutely.
To be is in a cave.
And if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen those, you can check those out. We've got several shows we've done on caves and associating Bigfoot behavior with caves, including Dogman as well. And it's part of our zone theory. And why you, for example, with the missing 411, if you overlap the maps of the missing clusters over the maps of known cave systems, they line up practically identically. I'm sorry, folks. Even with the cough drop, it's still kind of kicking my butt. But we're looking at the repeated pattern behaviors, which we're seeing across all of these. The proximity seems to be getting closer with each of these, and we got a lot of consistency across these cases. So let's stop for a minute and look at what we actually have so far. Not what we think it is, not what we want it to be, just what's on the table. We started with a roadway crossing, something out in the open, something moving upright, covering the ground in a way that the witness said didn't line up with a bear. Then we moved into a cabin observation, something holding position in cover, partially obscured, staying still long enough to be watched before it disappears. Then after that, we got into the face level observation across a ravine. Now we got something that doesn't just sit there. It tracks, turns, and comes back, which is at the very least suggests awareness. And now we've got proximity, close enough that the behavior matters just as much as the appearance. So here's the question we need to be asking right now. Are these all describing the same type of behavior in different situations? Or are we talking about different things under different conditions and grouping them together because they sound similar when someone tries to explain them? Because if it's the same explanation, you'd expect some consistency. Movement pattern would line up. Reaction to people would line up. Decision making, whether it stays or goes, would start to look familiar across the cases. And we've got some overlap. We've also got a few differences. And the differences do matter. Because when you're working real cases, that's where the things usually start breaking down. So let's run it straight. Case 1 gave us open movement. Case 2 gave us concealment. Case 3 gave us awareness. And Case 4 gave us a reaction at closer distances. That could be progression. Or it could be 4 different situations with 4 different explanations. And that's where you've got to decide how tight you're going to be. You can either say they're all connected, or you can say they don't. What you can't do is assume it. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because the more these get reported, the more people tend to focus on what was seen. Height, shape, and hair. But the part that's harder to fake and harder to misread is the behavior. And the behavior is where we're not perfectly lined up yet. We've got pieces that fit and pieces that don't. So the next case is where we find out what direction this is actually going. Because if the the behavior tightens up, then you've got something to look at. And if it doesn't, then you start peeling those layers back part one by one. But the amazing part about this is we do see the consistencies. We're looking at common behaviors across multiple threads. Now, if it was just these 4 cases, I would be willing to say, oh, it's just entirely possible that those were just coincidence. But the thing about it is over the years, we've probably reviewed thousands of cases. And these behaviors are consistent across multiple hundreds of these reports. Robbie, what do you think? Have you seen something similar?
Yeah, I think we've consistently shown that those behavior patterns line up across multiple decades, multiple counties, multiple states, multiple regions. I think the pattern becomes too hard to ignore at that point.
Yeah, I think that's we're building a solid case for consistency, which is exactly what we're supposed to do. And we approach any new report we get the same way. If somebody it happened, say down near Table Rock Lake, they give me a lake road where it happened. I'll grab Noah or somebody who's available, and I'll go check it out. And sometimes the pattern lines up, sometimes it doesn't. But we got to take each case we get. We got to take it and identify the common factors in it, the common behaviors in it, and it's the reason why we do this is it's the way Robbie and I were trained. I'm a retired cop. Robbie's still in law enforcement, and that's also why Steve and Doc make such a great addition to this, because Robbie and I look at it evidence based completely. We have to go with this. We're thinking like cops. We're looking at evidence. We're looking at things that don't fit. We're looking for patterns. Steve and Doc, they come at it from a more scientific end. They're both medical backgrounds. Steve had some law enforcement experience before he became a nurse. Doc was an Air Force flight medic, so he's got the military behind him, his experience. So we each bring different sets of skills to the table. And when we all see the same patterns, when we agree on these patterns, that's when these things really start lining up. Like, unfortunately, Doc wasn't with us in Combs Ferry that night. But even once we got back to civilization, so to speak, Steve was like, yeah, I saw this, I heard this. Steve was right there with us on our assessment. And Steve's always been kind of the skeptic of the group. But I think Combs Ferry kind of changed him.
Yep. That was his paradigm shift.
Yeah, Steve's no longer on the fence. Man, I really hope those cough drops would help more than they're helping. They're not doing a whole lot. We still got a few minutes before our next commercial break.
I think you got some messages in Messenger from people who were sending stuff to you for
let me check.
You'd ask for.
Give me just a second. Did those messages get sent to
Hillary
Facebook?
Hillary sent one to me and you both. What you'd asked her for?
Oh yeah, the video. Let me see if I can pull that up. I'd like to take a look at that real quick. Give me just a second here. I don't know if I can show this on the air because it's not my video. But it comes from a Bigfoot movie from 2007. I think this was all filmed on a reservation. Yeah, unfortunately, it's 8 minutes long. I'm not going to be able to go through the whole thing. I'm trying to skip ahead to see the part. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I can absolutely see what they're talking about here. Let me Okay, fair use will allow me to show part of this. I can't show the video, but I can share the image, and I've got a frozen image. We'll just let you guys decide. Robbie, take a look at this.
I've seen that before. I can't remember.
Look at the mid-tarsal break.
Mm-hmm.
Got the ankle bones. It looks like, unless it's incomplete, looks like it's only got 3 toes.
Mm.
Wish there was something in there for reference.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, it looks big, but
yeah, that's a very interesting piece of footage. I need to watch that whole thing and do a breakdown on it. Maybe we can do a breakdown video on it. Yeah, very cool. Hillary, thank you for sending it to me. We'll get a chance to watch that whole video, then maybe we can do a breakdown video on it. So, Robbie, what are some of the biggest sticking points you've got with all of these? And you can compare and contrast them if you want to even famous cases. What are the things that are standing out for you the most in all of these cases?
well, I mean, obviously, one of the big standouts is their proximity to one another. This is all the same area. So, like we've done before in the past, we've shown stuff that, cases from, different states and things like that. This is all the same general area. So it's very possible that you're looking at, either the same creature or same group of creatures.
Yeah, because that is a even though that area around Sevier County is pretty vast, it's all connected. That's all the Smokies and all that parkway, the Great Smoky Mountain, Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It's a vast area, full of some of the most rugged terrain you're going to run into.
Yep.
You've been up in that area quite a bit, haven't you, Robbie?
Yeah. Not as much here lately as I used to be, but when I was younger, I was up there all the time. I used to go up there at least once a year.
So how does that compare to, how does that terrain compare to the area where you set your first book? That area you call the horse pasture?
The horse pasture is more like, think of it as the foothills of that, because Pickens is known as the gem of the foothills, and we're kind of the foothills. We're at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So think of it as just it. There's mountains, but they're not the big mountains yet. It's just as you're getting started at the base of the mountains. So it's a lot of rough terrain, a lot of dense forests, creeks, rivers, things like that. Pretty diverse ecosystem. Bears, bobcats, mountain lions, coyotes, wolves, deer.
So what's consistent about that area that could support a large predator like that?
Well,
the area not only from that area, but from the area of these reports.
Obviously there's enough prey items to support it. There's elk and deer and all kinds of small game in that area. So, not to mention whatever else they can forage for in the woods, berries, roots, and things like that. And plus, it's it's remote. You get off the tourist paths, and you can be lost in under 10 minutes if you don't know where you're going, what you're doing. And that's rugged terrain up there. I mean, that's true mountain terrain. I mean, that's like you see mountains going up that with trees, the hills like that, and the trees are growing straight up off the mountain. So, I mean, it's rough country.
Bobby, thank you for gifting the memberships. And since it's a new month, we're going to do that too. We're going to give away 5 right now. So good luck, folks. Should be popping up any second.
Raiders C Club, Lee McM2316, Connor Wolf's Outdoors, Bass Play 510, and GS Man 1788.
You know what? Let's do it again. Let's give away the other 5. I can give away up to 10, so let's do that.
Sunshine N1N, Justice for Peanut, Kimberly Morgan 3543, and Joe Douglas 2596.
And Milkman gave away 5. Thank you, dude. Appreciate that, man.
Way to go, Jeffro.
A lot of memberships given away tonight. Awesome. Congratulations to everybody that won one. Congratulations, everybody. That is awesome. Jeff, thank you. And who was it that gave away? Bobby Singleton gave away the first ones. Thanks, Bobby. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you guys. Dorothy, I'd like to see that if you've got a link to it. I'd love to see that. So now that we've got enough on the table to start pushing this a little harder, we've looked at movement out in the open, we've looked at something staying hidden, and now we've got behavior that changes once it knows it's being watched. Oh, Dr. Sharp gave away 5. Awesome. Thank you, dude. Holy crap. That is awesome. Thank you, everybody. These don't all point in the same direction, though. Some of it lines up and some of it doesn't. And that's where this gets uncomfortable if you're trying to force it into one explanation. Because if it's all the same thing, that behavior should start tightening up. And right now, we're not quite there. So the next case we're going to go into is whether or not that changes, or if it doesn't. Because this one involves a reaction that forces distance, not just observation. But we've got to take a quick break, though. And when we come back, we're going to see if that pattern fully locks in. So if you guys will bear with us, we will be right back after a few messages from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Dot Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DARoberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the dead rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and man's marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of DARoberts. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. 2026 is off to a great start, and it's almost time. With many exciting predictions and the recent emphasis on a potential major planetary event occurring in April, it promises to be a super transformational month, and we couldn't be more excited to be in Hawaii during this shift to integrate new frequencies. Folks, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. April the 20th through the 24th, 2026, join us in Kona, Hawaii for Journey to Truth's very first vacation conference retreat. Enjoy 9 presenters over 5 days with ocean adventures with dolphins and whales and sacred sites and so much more. Experience Hawaii like never before. You will enjoy 5 days on the Big Island, so don't wait. Start planning your trip today at journeytotruth.online. That's journeytotruth.online. The paranormal field is changing, and now, more than ever, it's time for professionals to lead the way. Join the Oz Professional Paranormal Investigators Association, a global network of serious investigators dedicated to raising the standard of real paranormal research. Access professional certifications, advanced training, and courses exploring true investigation, psychic phenomena. If you're a real paranormal investigator, be a part of the group defining the future. Join today. Visit ozinstitute.org. That's ozinstitute.org.
And we're back, folks. Before the break, we started tightening things up. We've looked at movement out in the open, we've looked at something staying hidden, and we've looked at awareness when it knows it's being watched. And that's where it starts getting a little uncomfortable if you're trying to keep everything under one nice, clean explanation. Because some of it lines up and some of it doesn't. So now we're going to push it one step further. Up to this point, everything we've looked at could still sit at observation distance. This next one doesn't stay there. This one forces a reaction. Robbie?
All right, here's the next one. Same general region, Smoky Mountain terrain, Tennessee side. And again, we're staying with a Class A visual encounter where behavior matters just as much as what we've seen. We're still working with off the BFRO report 77933, and now we're focusing specifically on what happens after the initial visual contact, because this is where the encounter actually shifts. Witness makes visual contact, confirms he's looking at something with structure, not a stump, not a shadow, not something fixed. And now the key detail. This is not something that immediately leaves. It stays just long enough to confirm presence, and that's important. Because once that line is crossed, once both sides know the other is there, behavior should change. And it does at some point. Visual contact breaks. Now we're not watching it anymore. And shortly after that, according to the report, there's movement through the timber. Enough to hear, enough to know that something left that position and moved off. Now we've got a sequence: observation, awareness, then movement once that observation is broken. That's a reaction, not passive, not accidental. That's a decision point. So let's run it again. If this is a bear, how does that play out? Bear knows you're there, picks up on human presence, Typically, you'll get one of these three things. It leaves immediately, it postures briefly, and then leaves, or it repositions and creates distance. What you generally don't get is extended stillness followed by delayed movement tied to loss of visual contact. That's not typical. Not impossible, but just not typical. Now let's look at the human behavior. Could this be a person? 50 yards, partially concealed, holding position, watching someone, then moving off once they believe they're no longer being directly observed? That fits better, but now you've got to account for environment. Remote terrain, no indication of another person being in that immediate area, no follow-up evidence of human presence, and the description doesn't line up cleanly with clothing or movement patterns you'd expect from someone on foot in that terrain. So human stays on the table, but it's not clean, and that's where the case lives. Not clean. Now stack this one with everything else. First case, you got movement across the road. Second case, something holding position and cover and disappearing. Third case, something aware enough to track movement and then look back. And now this, something that reacts once the awareness is broken. That's 4 different behaviors, but there's a thread running through all of them: presence, awareness, and decision making. Something sees, something chooses, something moves based on that interaction. That's different than just misidentifying shapes, because the shape errors don't create behavior patterns. Movement does. Response does. So now we're at the point in the episode where the question changes again. Not what did they see, but what is making these decisions. Because if the reports are all separate misidentifications, then each one should stand on its own with an explanation that fits clean. But if they don't, then the overlap starts to matter more than the differences. And we're not all the way there yet, but we're getting close enough that you can't ignore it either.
I think the timing on these is the most interesting portion. The movement occurring after visual contact is broken. That's happened more than once in these.
Yeah, it's happened several times. The decision-based behavior too. Differences between instinctive animal movement versus situational response. Yeah, I think that's a big factor.
I like that the witnesses had the presence of mind to try to figure out what it was before they filed a sighting with the BFRO. Is it a bear? Could this be a person? And personally, I would be more skeptical about the other person doing it, because every time I go camping, I'm armed, and that's a really good way to get shot if you're trying to sneak up on camps and scare them. I'm not saying I would be quick to shoot at somebody, but there are folks out there that are pretty trigger happy. And you start making noise like you're some sort of monster out there in the woods, they might just take a shot at you.
Yeah.
So you got to factor that in. If that's a human doing that, they're taking their life in their own hands doing that kind of junk. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, we've said it before. How are people? Number one, how do you know that these people are there? Are you just sitting there, day in and day out in the same spot, just hoping that somebody's going to walk up that you can prank?
Right.
I probably not. But I think the other person factor just kind of falls away when you start taking stuff like that into consideration.
It was like Combs Ferry, the interactions we had on Combs Ferry. We went in there late at night by boat because there was no way to get in there by car. So we had to literally sneak in after dark in a boat and go in small groups. For us to have the interactions we had on there, well, number one, nobody knew we were coming, and number two, how would they have gotten in there without a boat?
Yeah.
we would have seen another boat in the area. Because we were all over that peninsula.
That's, like I said, I think that's where the human element starts falling apart.
Like Jeff's saying, you might get ventilated if you mess with my tent in the middle of the night. Yeah, if somebody comes up messing with your tent in the middle of the night, I think it's a pretty safe indication they're not there to play Scrabble. Hey, Tyler. White, it sounds like Combs Ferry. Yeah, Combs Ferry is a creepy place. Even in broad daylight, that place is creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll give you the heebie-jeebies even in broad daylight.
It did.
And has. So, at what point does observation turn into engagement? Because I think this was kind of an engagement.
Yeah. I mean, not on the sense of they actually physically engaged each other, but I say it was definitely a standoff type situation.
And, it's one of those situations where if it had ill intent, you'd have known it. They were close enough with nothing between them. If it wanted to do something, it would have done it. Miss Lene says, if y'all would have gotten serious trouble, you'd have needed Wild Hunt and Margolin with his big bang bangs. We were all pretty well strapped that night, but, even that night, it was the night Lieutenant Jenkins decided he was buying a Desert Eagle 50 because a 9mm just wasn't big enough. Jeff Milkman says Pat Noble had something unzip his tent in Alabama. I had something unzip my tent one night here in the Mark Twain. It turned out it was a raccoon. Freaked me out.
One of them big raccoons.
Yeah, those 7-foot raccoons. No, the one that unzipped my tent was just a straight up raccoon. I will never leave my zipper at the bottom again, though. We now zip the zipper to the top. So, another pattern, a pattern is presence, awareness, reaction. So, we'll look at the environment. What's the likelihood of a person being there versus wildlife?
I think the likelihood of it being a person is way, way, way down on the spectrum. I think maybe 5%.
And like you were saying, if it was a person going out there looking to pull a prank on somebody, not only one, is it dangerous, but two, you got to hope somebody shows up. You get into those more off the beaten path places, the likelihood of running into another person is pretty low.
Yeah. Like I said, are they just randomly walking through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park just hoping that they're going to find somebody? Or are they sitting in one spot saying, well, somebody will eventually come by that I can prank? I mean, I don't see people doing that, because none of these things, other than the one that was on 441 or the one that was at a cabin, was in any place that's like really a high traffic area, so to speak.
Right. So what do you think? What's your opinion? Do you think these behaviors are all connected, or do you think this is just different?
Oh, I think, excuse me, sorry, we're up since 5 this morning. I think they're all. I think we've shown that there's a pattern that goes across all the cases that we've talked about tonight, and even shares patterns with cases we've done on previous shows.
Oh, I agree. I think we're seeing a lot of consistency in the behaviors. Which this all brings us to this final segment, which is called considered an immediate reaction encounter. So let's run one more before we wrap this up. And this one's not about a distance or observation. This is about what happened when something reacts fast enough that you don't have time to process it. We're staying in the same general region, Smoky Mountain terrain, and we're still working from documented Class A style observations, where behavior is the focus. But in this case, the witness is moving through wooded terrain, not sitting still, not watching from a distance. He's actively moving, checking the ground, and working his way through an area. So now we're not just observing the environment, we're part of it. At some point, he becomes aware that something is close. Not something he saw at first, but he felt it. He stops, looks around, and catches a glimpse of movement off to the side. Not a full body, not a clear figure, just enough motion to tell him that something is there. Now here's where it changes. Instead of holding position, instead of watching, or instead of slowly moving away, whatever was there moves quickly and creates distance immediately. Brush breaking, movement through timber fast enough that there's no chance to get a second look. No pause, no hesitation, no back and forth awareness, just gone. And that's important because now we got a different kind of reaction. Not controlled observation, not concealment, not interaction. This is immediate disengagement. So now we run it one more time. Bear behavior. This actually fits better with bear behavior than some of the others. Startle response, rapid disengagement, crashing through the brush to create distance. That's fairly normal. Human behavior, also possible. If somebody didn't want to be seen and realized they'd been noticed, that was kind of a quick withdrawal that could happen. So, here's why this case matters. Not because it proves anything, but because it pulls the pattern in a different direction. Now we got one that lines up clean with known behavior. So when you lay all of these out together, you don't get one clean pattern. You do get overlap, and you get contradiction. And that's what the real data looks like. When you start analyzing these report sightings, this is the kind of thing you've got to look out for. You've got to look for the similarities, and you've also got to look at the differences. Robbie, what do you think is so pertinent about this one? Immediate reaction versus a delayed reaction.
Like you said, I mean, it automatically lines up with what you would expect from a bear as soon as it realizes contact with a human or a deer or anything like that. It's spooked and off in the woods it goes, not caring that it's making a ton of noise. So I think that immediately stands out to me is that's, like you said, that's the expected response from an animal, a known animal.
Yeah. Right. So if this was a Bigfoot, and at this point we can't say one way or the other, but if this is a Bigfoot, that means it reacted the way other known animals would react. So, again, that's a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That reacts like a living, breathing animal.
Yep.
So, is this definitively a Bigfoot? We don't know. But if it is, it really kind of sheds a whole light on what this thing is. Because in order for it to be classifiable or identifiable, it has to exist within the framework of modern biology. It might have characteristics or things we can't fully explain, but that doesn't mean it's anything supernatural. It's behaving like an animal, and we're learning this. We're discovering how it eats, what it eats. It has to eat. It reproduces. All these are hallmarks of a living, breathing animal. But why do you think this case fits known behavior better than the others, though?
I mean, like I said, it immediately reacts the way you would expect a deer or a raccoon or something like that to react. It immediately disengages and, like I said, like Doc likes to say, unasked is the AO, instead of that precise and patient behavior that we've talked about over the other. It just bugs out.
Exactly. Do you think this having possible natural explanations, do you think it weakens the other cases or actually strengthens them?
No, I think it strengthens them because something we hadn't talked about. What if this was a younger one that he reacted with? And I personally think that I've interacted with younger ones that and they react the way we were just talking about, like the way a deer would react. They take off running because they don't see themselves as being able to handle situations like an adult would. So they've been taught to run if they feel threatened. So
Like that area where was it you and Johnny were there?
Yep.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
We always feel like we're getting paced out of there until we get back to that red gate that where the parking area is, and usually it stops just shy of that. Well, this time, whatever was following us kept on going. We didn't initially we didn't know that it did, and we were just sitting there at the truck, just talking, basically debriefing what we'd seen, what was going on, and back. So we were still looking into the woods. So back to our right, because we were facing the woods. Back to our right is where you go out, and there's houses down that way, but there's still a good chunk of area up there there's nothing, no houses or anything on. And while we're sitting there talking, we hear something. Sounds like something fell down the bank. Still couldn't see anything, but it's like it was up higher in the trees, and it kind of fell down the bank a little way, whether it slid on some leaves or whatever. But you could hear something sliding down the hillside. We hear it. We start walking towards it. Well, as soon as we start walking towards it, we hear a tree break, a big limb snap back off to our left on the other side of that gate. We turn back and look at that. As soon as we turn back and look at that, whatever had fell down the hill, we hear it get back up and run back up the hill and then back across towards the other side of the gate. So what we've theorized, again, it's just a theory, was a juvenile being shown how to pace people out of the area, and it went a little too far, fell, and whoever was watching it, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever it was, realized that we were heading towards it, caused a distraction for us to look. There again, that distracted behavior. As soon as we turn and look in that direction of the tree snap, it gets up and takes off running.
And that's consistent with the one of the reports from tonight. That is your personal experience. That when that guy took his eyes off it and turned his head back, it was gone, waiting for a distraction to move. And I think that just lends a lot more credibility to these, because when we can evaluate it against real world experiences that we've had and see how these behaviors line up, now we can't say with 100% certainty that all of these stories tonight were in fact, without a doubt, Bigfoot sightings. It's almost impossible to do that without a doubt unless you actually caught it on film or you had multiple eyewitnesses. And even then, sometimes you got to be a little skeptical. But I think that it heightens the credibility of all of these reports that we see such a consistency in behavior.
I agree.
So let's start to bring this whole thing together. We started this episode saying we weren't just doing stories. We were doing documented encounters, and that's exactly what we did. We walked through multiple reports, different locations, same general region, different situations, and different types of exposure. And when you lay them out side by side, here's what you've actually got. You've got a road crossing with upright movement that doesn't clearly match a bear. You've got something holding position in cover long enough to be observed. You've got awareness, something that appears to recognize that it's being watched, and you've got reaction tied to that awareness. And now you've got at least one case that lines up clean with known wildlife behavior. And that's the key, because if you're being honest about this, you don't get to ignore that last one. You don't get to throw it out just because it doesn't fit the pattern you might be leaning toward. That's the difference between investigation and storytelling. So where does that leave us? It leaves us right where we should be. Some of these reports hold up well enough that you can't casually explain them away, while others fall directly into known predator behavior once you break them down, and a few just sit in the middle. Not explained, not confirmed, just unresolved. And that's the real answer, because not everything fits. Not everything connects, but not everything falls apart either. And when you're dealing with something like this, that's the space you have to stay in if you want to keep your credibility. You don't force a conclusion. You don't let the data sit where you let the data sit where it lands. Now, could all of this still be misinformation? Yes, absolutely. There's nothing here that forces a different answer. But at the same time, when you start stacking behavior, not just appearance, when you do start seeing things that don't line up as clean as they should, if it was all just one simple explanation. But that's as far as it goes. And that's far enough, because the goal here was never to prove anything. The goal was to take real reports, put them under pressure, and see what survives. And some of it did, some of it didn't, and some of it, well, still needs a little more digging. So tonight, we've had documented encounters, tested against reality, because that's what we do. And that's where we're going to leave this one tonight, folks. If you got something out of this episode, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Share it with somebody you trust who spends time in the woods. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to support what we're doing here and help us keep the research going in the right way, you can join the channel membership. That's what lets us keep digging into cases like this instead of just telling stories. We appreciate y'all being here, and we'll see you guys on the next one. This has been the Nightmare Hunters. And before we go, we are going to talk about a few other things. Robbie, you want to tell us about the authors in our midst?
Sure. DA has just released his latest in the Hangman's
Legacy.
I keep wanting to say saga every time I talk about it. Hangman's Legacy. This one is Lost Treasure you and these fancy words. Sangre de Christus.
Sangre de Cristo means the blood of Christ.
That one. It's the second book in that series. First one was a lot easier to pronounce. Doing really good. I think you said you just got bumped out of the top spot, and
yeah, I'm now at number 2 and number 3.
Darn, only a month and a half at number 1. must be hard. Doc's still working on book 2, but Doc is he's just the kind of guy that he wants to make sure it's, as far in his estimation, 100% perfect. It's pretty much done. He's just refining it a little bit more. That's the second one in the Dark Frontiers, the Vampire Chronicles. And I wasn't planning on it, but I released 2 books this past month. I had Valley of Bones done for a while and was planning on sitting on it for a little while. And some things just kind of happened, and I had to practice my skills as a cover artist. So I've got now my Dark Frontiers book, Blood Wolves of Ardennes, and Valley of Bones, both that are out right now. And I am about 17, 18,000 words, I think, into the follow-up book for Dark Frontiers, and it's called Black Sun Rising. Dark Frontiers War Journals, Black Sun Rising. And as big as Blood Wolves was, I think this one will probably be bigger than that. Because I'm only 9 chapters in, and I'm already almost at 20,000 words.
I've got 2 projects that I'm working on currently. Hope to have them both done and released as soon as possible, but I'll try to get them done, get them to you. The other day when we were talking about the release of Hangman's Legacy, the sequel to Hangman's Legacy, Lost Treasure, the Sangre de Cristos, I asked y'all what book you wanted to see next, and the most common answer was Apex Predator. So with that in mind, I have 2 projects currently running. The first is called Apex Predator Cursed Moon, and it's flowing pretty well. I'll be sending some of that out to the alpha readers probably tonight or tomorrow. And I also have a brand new project that's called Mile Marker Mysteries. I don't want to give away too much about it yet, but let's just say it involves former veteran who comes home and winds up being a trucker and keeps stumbling into mysteries. Well, that's about as much description as I'm comfortable giving out right now. But I'm really excited where that one's going. It's a lot of fun to write, and it'll be about the same size as the Hangman Legacy books, probably between the 140 to 160,000 words. Whereas the Apex Predator probably going to be a little bigger than normal. Probably going to be shooting for in the ballpark of 100,000 words on it. So I've got two pretty sizable projects coming on, and I hope to have them both done in the next few weeks. And I think you guys are going to enjoy them. So Miss Lene says the Mile Marker Mysteries is really good. She's enjoying it. Milkman says just finished Leviathan and I'm into the new Hangman's Legacy. I hope you like it, dude. And that's kind of where we are on the books. So you've got a book that's out from Doc. You can check it out. What is it? Angels of the Wilderness.
Dark Frontiers, Vampire Chronicles, Angels of the Wilderness.
And you can find it on Amazon. It's also available on audio now.
Yeah, he finally got audio available. And the second one is Dark Frontiers, Vampire Chronicles, Blood and Deadwood.
And you guys are going to like it. Robbie's newest book, my newest book are both out. I think you guys will enjoy them.
Two newest.
Two newest. Yeah, I dropped 2 in a month as well. So check all the new books. I think you guys are going to enjoy them. You can find them all on Amazon in Kindle, audio, and in print. And you can find my books on DARoberts.net. But they're all available. Everyone's books are available on Amazon in Kindle, print, and audio. So hope you guys will check those out. And before we go, we need to mention our sponsors for the channel. We've got 3 affiliates that I want to mention. First being Dark Angel Medical. That's Doc's company. It's a fantastic company, darkangelmedical.com. And they save lives, folks. They make medical kits, everything from basic first aid all the way up to mass trauma. Fantastic kits. I carried one for years as a cop. I wouldn't trust my life to any other kit. So check out darkangelmedical.com and don't forget to use discount code cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. And then you check out the good folks over at Scallywag Tactical. They make fantastic blades, and they've got a lot of really cool equipment that you can get as well. So go to scallywagtactical.com. Check them out and use discount code DARoberts10 for 10% off your entire order. And our most recent, SigwoArms.com. They're a local firearms company here in Springfield, Missouri. Veteran-owned company, just like the other two, veteran-owned. And we're proud to support our veteran-owned companies. Sigwo Arms has got the rights to make Codename Wild Hunt or even Dark Frontiers themed uppers and lowers, or just about anything else you want to put it on. But they're the folks that can make it for you. So check out sigwoarms.com for all your needs in firearms, ammunition, and even suppressors. They've got all your favorite brands, plus they manufacture them there on site as well. So they have their own lines of ARs and other weapons. So check them out. Fantastic group of people, and let them know we sent you. And use discount code Bigfoot5 for 5% off your order. Or if you're a first responder or a military, you can bump that up to 10%. Just let them know at checkout that you're military or first responder. Or if you're in the area, just swing by. They're over on Commercial Street. So check them out. Again, all of our affiliates are all veteran-owned and veteran-ran companies, and we're proud to support our veterans and first responders. As we close things out, there's one thing I always talk about. This is very near and dear to my heart. And kind of a carry back to what Robbie was talking about at the beginning, we're very, very, very proud to support our veterans and first responders here. And one of the things we like to talk about is the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. So reach out to your friends and family that are first responders or military or active duty or retired, or even if they're just no longer in. Reach out and let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care, because these folks, sometimes they carry some pretty deep scars that just don't show. Because PTSD is a killer. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care, because at least 22 times a day, they're losing that battle. And let's get that number down to 0 where it needs to be.
Will you put Kane's picture up one more time?
Sure, absolutely. Let me pull that back up. Oops, there we go. Give me just a second. I'll have that. I will put this up one more time, and you guys can check it out again. Here we go.
And like I said, guys, if you can help these soldiers, help escort him home. Like I said, good kid. My heart hurts on this one because he was one of my favorites, and I loved all my kids I coached, but you know, Kane was one of the good ones. So if anything you can do to help, I would appreciate it.
And folks, we're going to close her out with a toast that we've been doing for a while. If you guys have been with us for any length of time at all, you'll know the toast. So I'm going to take my hat off. And Robbie, if you don't mind taking us out on the toast tonight.
Raise a glass. Doesn't matter what you're drinking. It could be anything from the old Irish drinking song, The Parting Glass. It goes, but since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night, Slanja. We'll see you next time.
Slanja va.
Plains, the winds are howling, saloon doors swinging, shadows growling. 3 lawmen stand tough as rawhide. Yeah, Doc and DA, nothing can abide. Whiskey shots and poker faces, staring down the darkest spaces in this town where legends roam. These boys bring justice, sending evil home. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Jed's a howler, claws of steel, Doc's a biter, makes the devil real. But DA's a shifty one, a shape-shifting soul, can turn to anything, takes any form, takes control. Tonight the chupacabras come to town, sucking the life from all around. But these lawmen, they ain't afraid, they'll face the darkness unafraid. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rain. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Full moon rises, bat wings flap, the air grows cold, a chill and trap. But these lawmen, they're ready to fight underneath the pale moonlight. Jed and Doc transform with a howl, DA shifts, becomes a night